Have you ever had the feeling that you're being watched? Have you ever heard disembodied voices coming from seemingly nowhere? Have you ever been touched by unseen hands? Have those that crossed over tried to communicate with you, trying to give you messages for their loved ones from the other side? Are you ever awakened at night by the sound of footsteps that stop right by your bedside? And have you seen objects move on their own accord? No? I have. Welcome to the Karma Files Full Moon bonus episode. This is my personal nightmare. Location: Columbia, California. Approximately 2005. Columbia is located in the heart of the California Motherlode. It is a living gold rush town. Visiting Columbia is like traveling back in time to the sights, smells, and sounds of a 19th century mining town. Merchants dressed in 1850s attire, a whiff of coal smoke from the blacksmith shop, and the rumble of a stagecoach pulling into town. It's a place where family come to pan for gold, take tours, and ride the stagecoach. But if you ask any locals if it's haunted, you will find many stories. And I was one of the unlucky ones that got to meet one of these spirits. I was coming to Columbia to a theater production and was spending the night. We decided to stay at a bed and breakfast just up the hill from the cemetery, across from the old schoolhouse. This bed and breakfast was called the Harlan House, and there are rumors that the Martinelli Cider family used to reside here. The Harlan House is an award-winning country inn offering Victorian hospitality and comfort, overlooking picturesque Columbia State Park in the heart of Gold Country. The house was built in 1910 and was considered one of Columbia's finest homes at the turn of the century. I remember driving up to the beautiful yellow Victorian home. This handsome Columbia Victorian began receiving guests in early 1992 after a complete renovation by owner Samantha O'Brien. She was a sweet, older woman with long gray hair and piercing blue eyes. Eyes that you felt were looking straight to your soul. She invited us in and showed us around. I remember feeling a connection with her, and she seemed very warm and kind. She took us upstairs, where there were 3 spacious bedrooms with Victorian and American antiques. Each room has a unique view of the Harlan House grounds. Our room was called the Yellow Room, which had yellow walls and white Victorian furniture. I initially didn't feel anything paranormal going on there, I wasn't even thinking about it. So we put our things away and decided to go out to the gold mining town and walk around before our show. Darkness had fallen on Columbia as we were driving back to the Harlan house for the night. As we drove up the hill, the 2-story Victorian looked peaceful and pleasant. We got up to our room and I felt fine, but as I lay down in the bed to go to sleep, I had a slight uneasy feeling. I laid there on my side, looking at the door to the hallway, waiting for it to open. I then tried to reason with myself, as I knew there was a graveyard just down the street. It made me a little uneasy, but I figured maybe that was why. So I closed my eyes and tried to go to sleep. Sometime during the night, I was awoken by a woman in Victorian dress. She was shaking me frantically, trying to wake me up. She said her name was Mary, and she needed help desperately. She was trying to get me to follow her to the next bedroom, which was the blue room. She said there was a medical emergency and she needed me to come right away. We were the only ones staying in the house that night, so I knew the room next to us was empty. But never having stayed here, I felt uneasy exploring the house, especially alone and at night. I felt sorry for this woman, but I had to decline her invitation, for I didn't think it was best to be following spirits around that I didn't know, and I had no idea what her motive was, or what she wanted from me. After I declined her invitation, she left the room, and I fell back asleep peacefully for the rest of the night. When I awoke the next morning, I remembered what had happened. I went downstairs for breakfast and saw Sam, with her piercing blue eyes looking at me. I felt like she knew that I knew. So I waited for my opportunity to ask her if the house was haunted. I anxiously waited for her reply. As soon as I asked her, her eyes flew open wide and looked at me with a fiery glance. She had a slight smile on her face as she turned to me and said, "Oh, you must have met Mary." She then went on and said, "Mary died in childbirth in the room next to you, the blue room." Although I've had many experiences, this one somewhat shocked me, and I immediately felt sorry for the poor girl. She was stuck at the Harlan house, reliving this childbirth over and over again, and looking for someone to help her. We were only there for one night, so after breakfast, we left and went home. But I vowed to come back to try and help Mary. The next time we returned, we again stayed in the yellow room, as I was too frightened to try and stay in the blue room. Sadly, Mary never asked for help again, but she did make her presence known. She would shake the bed and move things around the room. And on one particular visit, I brought my children. We stayed in the wine cellar. It was located in the basement of the house and was a spacious 2-bedroom room. My daughter was awoken in the middle of the night by a woman dressed in Victorian clothing seemingly trying to check on her as she slept. On another visit, I decided to go up to the cemetery and take a look around and see if I could find Mary's grave. As I stood on top of the hill, I looked down at the edge of the cemetery and I saw a woman standing by a grave in Victorian dress. So I started to walk down, and as I got closer, she disappeared. Was that Mary? I'll never know. I haven't been to the Harlan house in probably 15 years. Sadly, when I looked up the Harlan house recently for this episode, I found that the bed and breakfast has been permanently closed. But the good news is, they are accepting long-term leases. So if you're ever looking for a place to live in Columbia, California, right off Highway 49 in Gold Country, go check it out. Maybe you'll have the pleasure of meeting Mary. At times, my life can seem like the scariest of nightmares. Believer or skeptic, I know the veil is thin between us and those on the other side. Do you experience the paranormal? If you don't, maybe you're the ghost. This was a full moon bonus episode of the Mind Your Own Karma podcast called The Karma Files. If you enjoyed being terrified by my story, please haunt my DMs on Instagram or Facebook to let me know that you're dying for more. Do you have a ghost story to tell? You can send me your short story at mindyourownkarma@gmail.com. And if it gives me the chills, it may be featured on a future full moon episode. I'd like to personally welcome you to my nightmares. I think you're going to like it here.